A global reset has begun. Consciousness is being rewritten, and Elias is the key. Hit subscribe and stay connected before the signal cuts.
The phrase was still flashing on the screen. Correction initiated. Elias wasn't blinking. His body was rigid, as if held by an invisible field. His breathing had become too slow.
Elias, what's happening?
Amanda tried to pull him, but her arm met resistance. The air around him was denser, vibrating as if saturated with electricity. Then came the sound, a subtle yet precise hum that seemed to slide behind his eyes, touching a specific point in his brain. Amanda staggered. The base lights flickered. On the wall display, the frequency began to climb. And then, suddenly, total silence, as if the entire world had been placed inside an acoustic box. Outside, the thermal camera showed the sky, and the sky was curving. The clouds weren't spinning, they were yielding, pulled toward a central point, as if the sky had a drain in the middle. The atmosphere trembled in rings, and at the center of the image, something was pulsing.
What is that?
Amanda zoomed in. In the middle of the darkened void, a thin crack was forming, but not in the layer of perception. The camera image trembled as it tried to focus. A vertical line of distortion ran from the top of the screen to the floor, the pixels twisting as if trying to prevent the image itself from being shown. Elias whispered, voice breathless,
"They opened."
What opened?
But he didn't answer. His eyes were completely white now, pupils erased. The veins around them vibrated with bluish tones. The room grew colder. Slowly, the panels began to emit a spiraling amber light, synchronized with the frequency rising on the display. Amanda stepped away from the screen. A new phrase appeared. Preparing consciousness inversion. Status executing. Mode cleans. She understood in that instant. The correction was a reset, an attempt to restore the factory settings, to erase the awakening. Amanda backed up to the corner of the room and looked at Elias, who was now floating slightly off the ground. The frequency climbed one more digit, and on the thermal camera display, the crack in the sky opened. The crack in the sky grew. Amanda stared at the thermal screen image. The distortion opened in a spiral shape, but it didn't follow the laws of space. It seemed to multiply upon itself, as if occupying several places at once. The base software tried to render the shape and failed. Crossed lines, impossible angles, contradictory scales. And then, from the opening, something descended, a piece of reality that didn't match the rest. The base floor vibrated with an impulse. One of the reinforced glass panels cracked. Elias was now spinning in the air, slowly, as if being scanned from the inside. His skin shone with metallic tones, and the lines that had appeared earlier were now connected, forming a map of organic circuits. Amanda ran to the control desk. She tried to shut down the process. Nothing responded. The screens began to flash with a new character, repeated in all windows. It was the symbol for corrupted files, but she had never seen it flash in rhythm with a frequency. Suddenly, the world around the base grew darker. Natural light seemed to be sucked away, as if the very air was exhausted of photonic energy. Outside, trees bent their crowns without wind. The crows in the field flew in inverted circles. The base's electromagnetic field dropped to zero. On the street, people who had previously seen strange reflections began to scream in pain. Some staggered, others fell to their knees, hands pressed to their ears as if something was being ripped out from within. The correction had begun on a global scale. And then Amanda saw them, On the live feed from the satellite camera, 4 of them. Tall shapes, incomplete. They were like fragments of thought trying to occupy space. One looked like an outline made of crooked lines. Another flickered like a burned VHS image. The third moved with a delay, as if time around it was repelling it. The fourth was still, but its eyes were everywhere. The screen went dark.
Elias, you have to snap out of this.
But Elias didn't hear. A new frequency emerged, lower, denser. She could barely hear it, but her body reacted. She felt her stomach churned, her vision blurred. The words vanished from her mind. Stabilizing human matrix. Denial of awakening in progress. Brain support localized, reconfiguring. Amanda fell to her knees. She looked up, gasping, and for the first time, she saw their shadows inside the room, like vertical tears in space, like black fissures that absorbed everything, even the meaning of things. The base screen showed real-time footage, people collapsing on sidewalks, stiff limbs, foam at the mouth. In hospitals, senses went haywire, pulse 0, incoherent EEG patterns. The correction process was shutting down the awakenings, one by one. On the central screen, recalibrating planetary consciousness, stabilizing compromised hosts. Origin? Internal. Amanda frowned. Internal origin? Then the base lights flickered 3 times, and the security door opened on its own. He entered, silent, precise. Dr. Hathaway. Half of his body was covered by a light exoskeleton, grafted directly onto his bones. His right arm was a compact weapon that silently reconfigured. A fiber-optic cable pulsed from his neck to the base of his spine. He entered with the gait of someone who already knew the entire place. "You shouldn't be here." He stopped in front of her. "I never left."
In a sharp movement, he launched a thin dart at the ceiling, and the base signal fell completely. Screens dead, panels dark. Amanda ran to the backup transmitter, but Hathaway's metallic arm flew toward her with a serpentine motion and grabbed her by the shoulder. He threw her against the workbench with violence. Amanda hit her back and fell. She coughed up blood. "I asked to leave. I asked to forget. They gave me another option." Hathaway crossed the room to Elias, who was now floating unstably in the center of the lab. "You don't understand, Amanda. Elias isn't going to awaken anything. He is the transmitter, a living server, an injection point. Through him, the flaw will be corrected." He pulled a spherical device from his waist, equipped with retractable needles. He approached Elias and pressed the apparatus against his chest. A direct pulse to the brain. 3 seconds, and everything returns to normal.
And it'll have to be a short circuit.
She threw it against Hathaway's exoskeleton. The impact exploded in sparks. Hathaway screamed and staggered. The metallic arm convulsed for an instant. Amanda took advantage. She ran to Elias and yanked the device from his chest. The symbol glowed like a living ember. But before she could throw it away, Hathaway grabbed her by the throat. He pulled her against the wall. Amanda gasped, kicking, scraping her nails on the synthetic arm. And it was at that moment the reverse pulse fired. Elias's body trembled. The marks on his skin began to spin in the opposite direction. A deep, vibrant sound filled the room. The window shook. Hathaway faltered. The grip loosened. Amanda shoved him with her elbow, fell to the floor, grabbed her own broken tablet, and with her last strength threw it at his head. The ocular implant cracked. Hathaway recoiled, bleeding light from his face. Elias descended to the floor with his eyes open. But now, his gaze wasn't just his. The core of the base opened by itself. The internal lights turned on even without power. Panels that had burned out began to display a hidden folder. Shadow Protocol. Amanda approached. Lines of text scrolled by, translated in real time. She read them aloud, almost in disbelief. Brain frequency layer artificially reduced. Social environment conditioned to scarcity. Energy cycle, suffering, neural charge, conversion. Origin, internal. That was a project.
The entire Earth had been adjusted like an extraction machine, using fear, war, guilt, labor, religions, and disease as constant fuel. The planet emitted pain for centuries, and the architects collected this energy as raw material. Amanda turned. Elias stood in the center of the room, his body almost motionless, but the environment around him alive. The air oscillated. Thin shells of dust spun around him as if there were wind, but the air vents were off. He was reconfiguring local density. The marks on his skin were no longer just symbols. They moved beneath his skin, repositioning themselves like organic circuits, changing place according to his thoughts. A pulse went through the room, silent but strong. Amanda shrank against the wall. The lights flickered. Outside, the external cameras caught movement in the skies of several capitals. They arrived not in ships. They descended. They floated above skyscrapers, transmission towers, military bases. The forms were not stable, constantly reconstructing. They mutated every second, as if their bodies were in too many eyes, too many joints, and movements that respected no axis or anatomy. But what was terrifying was not the shape, it was the behavior. They did not attack. They just started turning things off. They cut satellites. They took down power grids. They tried to restart the control system. They worked like technicians in a panic, trying to shut down a system that no longer obeyed them. Elias reacted. His body emitted a short flash without light, just displacement. Hottaway, unconscious on the floor, was violently dragged to the corner of the room. Amanda started to run, but she stopped. She saw Elias's skin had disappeared in parts. Where flesh had been, there was now an intertwining of gray, metallic, semi-organic layers, pulsing as if every organ had been rewritten. But he was not a machine. He was code that had become body. A line appeared on the base screen. Architecture unlinked. Extraction frequency cut. Global system autonomous. In the world, children were floating. Entire streets changed texture upon touch. People walked through walls unintentionally. Dreams of a place returned in full wakefulness. Everyone was connected, but without a network. The architects began to fail. One of them hovered over Kinshasa. It was trying to emit a restart pulse, its elongated limbs reconfiguring every second, but it froze. It hung suspended in the air for an instant, frozen. Then it disintegrated. No explosion, no light. It vanished from reality like an invalid data point. In Tel Aviv, another tried to anchor itself to a transmission tower, but its tentacles passed through the matter as if the planet itself refused its presence. It lost form, became a mass of flashing vectors, and disappeared. New York, Cairo, Mumbai. One by one, they were ejected from the physical plane. In the base, Amanda felt the field changing frequency. Everything in her was being reprogrammed. Her hearing amplified. Her heart slowed down. Her skin registered temperature, but without reacting with sweat. She looked at her hands. Her fingers trembled as if they contained more joints than before. She wasn't becoming superhuman. She was returning to what the species should have been. And then the transmission began. Elias stopped speaking with his mouth. His presence spread, not as sound, as a pulse, connecting all human brains to a single layer of understanding, without invading, without controlling, only opening the original channel, the one blocked millennia ago. The first to react was a boy in Ethiopia. He stopped chewing and pointed to the sky, saying, "They don't command anymore." In Norway, a nurse fainted, and when she woke up, she was speaking to the entire staff without moving her mouth. In Mexico, an ex-convict began to feel the emotions of everyone around him. He fell silent. He cried, and he could no longer lift his hand to hurt anyone. The entire planet reacted. Plants grew out of season. Insects moved in geometric patterns. Rivers changed course on their own, flooding lifeless regions and drying up overloaded areas. Satellites shut down for decades reactivated. The northern lights began to appear in places they never had before. Fish rose to the surface as if listening to something coming from the earth. And at the center of it all, Elias was not floating. He was walking. He stepped firmly, as if still human, but carrying the consciousness of billions. Amanda watched him. The structure of his body changed constantly, as if being redrawn with every step to reflect the new reality. His internal organs adjusted to a more efficient biology. The skeleton gained dynamic reinforcements. The skin responded to the environment, hot in the cold, firm under pressure, porous when necessary. It was not evolution. It was a return to the original design, without sabotage. The architects began to contort. This was not just a defeat, it was extinction. Without the field of pain sustaining their forms, they were losing structure. They were not dying, they were ceasing to have function. And when the last one tried to escape into the upper atmosphere, Elias's field expanded up there. It made contact, and it switched off. Amanda approached. Now the surrounding environment no longer obeyed old physics. Every step she took, the ground structure adapted to accommodate the movement. No friction, no resistance. She reached out her hand. She touched Elias. The sensation was solid, warm, firm, human. But his eyes did not carry personal identity. They carried data, information, total presence.
What are you now?
He answered in a simple voice, without effects, a whole body. And then he added, "Now we all are." And then the activation spread. In India, 5 children woke up at the same second. They began drawing the same symbol on the ground, without knowing each other, without ever having learned it. A pattern of functional geometry that activated fields in stone. In Iceland, a glacier undid its melting process in reverse. It didn't refreeze. It rolled back the process as if turning back time without losing its age. In the interior of Brazil, a pastor fell during prayer and woke up speaking a language of base mathematics. Those in the church understood, even without knowing why. Amanda left the base. The sky was normal, but the stars were not. The constellations had changed place.
Orion isn't there.
Elias followed her out. The entire system has been relocated. Now we are visible. The earth breathed, literally. The tectonic layers moved, but instead of earthquakes, the plates fitted together. An entire geological fault line in South Asia disappeared inside as if it had been closed. The planet was no longer Earth. It was
Version 1.
Epilogue. The sky was static, but the constellations had changed place. The orbital satellites, previously invisible, now formed crossing lines like markings in the field. Amanda walked up the plateau on foot. The gravity there was slightly adjusted. Each step required less from the body, as if the ground calibrated the force beneath her feet. She approached Elias. He was manipulating a stone panel, but there was no screen, no button. The stone reacted to the position of his pulse, opening freezes that emitted heat, color, and sound as he navigated the data.
Is the network stable?
Stable now, Elias replied, while adjusting a mineral sample with his fingers. 62% integrated. Amanda nodded. In the valley below, 12 children surrounded a structure made of living fiber. They took turns touching the surface. With each touch, the structure changed shape, sometimes in response, sometimes ignoring. They were testing the language of matter. Next to them, a young man leaned in front of a plant. It grew on one side and dried on the other, as if regulating its cycle based on his interest.
How many have made the transition?
Elias replied, while adjusting a mineral sample with his fingers. 62% integrated.
18 under observation. The rest still believe they can return to the old model.
How long until the undecideds realize it?
He did not answer. Below, one of the undecideds walked alone across the plain. His skin reacted to the wind with texture changes, but he still wore a breathing mask. Amanda watched. She said nothing. In the distance, structures grew from under the earth and then emerged. They were not built. They were activated. The material responded to the number of people. The environment only created what would be used. No excess, no lack. The lucids did not need to be organized. They organized the environment. There was no center of power, but there were cores of learning. When someone discovered something new, they didn't share it. The field updated everyone automatically. Elias walked to one of the bases and pressed its closed fist against the wall. It opened. Inside, 3 bodies were suspended, 2 adults and a child. They breathed slowly. Their bodies seemed to be in constant cellular regeneration, but they were not injured.
Did these die?
No, they chose to enter a pause. They are waiting for a specific event.
Which one?
They haven't said yet.
Amanda kept looking. One of the bodies moved its eye under the eyelid. Outside, the field expanded with every cycle. The former deserts now controlled their own climate. The glaciers retracted to their functional limit. Jurassic-era plants were identified as recovering, but nobody planted them. The earth understood, and the architects did not return because they could no longer be here. The density had risen above the extraction point. They had no way to consume what no longer existed: fear, scarcity, hierarchy. Amanda sat on the edge of the plateau. The surface was firm and slightly warm. The ground adjusted the temperature by contact. Elias remained standing. Beside her, his gaze fixed on the valley where 3 teaching cores were active. Amanda extended her hand, palm down. Elias took it. They stood like that for almost a minute. Then she let go and returned to observing the horizon. More than 30 light-years away, in a system off the commercial routes, the KETH-class orbital station had remained silent for almost 900 cycles. It was not rotating. It had no external signal. It was fixed in space, powered by an artificial gravitational field. Inside, in Surveillance Room 03, the visor captured an unusual trace. A being of the dense category began to emit an elevated pattern. The visor showed the system name, Sector 3-12, Earth. The image zoomed in. The being was there, 2.5 meters tall, coated in alternating layers of polymeric malleoy and synthetic tissue. The skin was opaque, but fragments of light escaped from under it. Its eyes had no shine. Only 2 reading axes circled asynchronously like cold sensors. He was a strategic archivist, level 5. He did not act, he observed, but only until the pattern became a real threat. He watched in silence. On the visor, Earth showed alterations.
rebalanced atmospheric zones, energy density outside the standard, mental transmission on a biological network.
The information passed quickly, but he followed all of it. Behind him, a second station lit up, synchronized. The being moved slowly to the center of the room. The structure recognized him. It did not ask for a verbal command. It simply waited. He spoke without sound, transmitting via direct field. They did not ask for authorization. They redefined their own level. They broke the cycle. They are expanding, and they think they won't be noticed. The station did not respond. It only recorded. The being continued. If this is not stopped, others will try. The error could become contagious, and then we will have another focus outside of symmetry. He approached the visor. The image of Earth remained stable, for now. We will observe for another 12 cycles. If they cross the next limit, I will authorize direct contact. He turned around. Planet Earth was now marked, and someone was paying attention.
Hey, if you watched until the end, thank you for being here. This story was part of the Architect's universe, and there's so much more coming. Please subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments what you think about the story. Get ready. The next story starts soon.